Mister, if they come, please hide my mom. Heartbreaking Western drama of a boy, his mother. On the edge of the galaxy, far from the bustle of the cities and the Empire's rule, there was a quiet rancher's cabin tucked away in the harsh, rocky plains of an uninhabited world. The planet, called Rygar, was desolate but beautiful, with long stretches of red earth and mountains that seemed to touch the stars. This was Cole's home, a place he'd chosen to live alone, far from the noise of war and politics. Cole was a man of few words, his days spent tending to his cattle and fixing the old fences that lined his property. Once, long ago, he had fought in the wars for the Empire, but those days were behind him. Now, he only wanted peace, and Rygar gave him that in abundance. He had no interest in the world beyond his ranch. The spaceports were a distant memory, and the local news rarely reached him. The people in the nearby settlements had long since given up on finding him. But all that was about to change. It was late in the evening when he first saw the boy. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving a cold purple sky. Cole was sitting on his porch cleaning his rifle after a long day of work when he heard the sound of footsteps. They were faint at first, the soft thud of boots against the dry earth. He stood, rifle in hand, scanning the horizon. It wasn't uncommon for travelers to pass through, but something about this felt different. Then he saw him, a small figure, running through the twilight. A boy, no older than 10 or 11, his clothes ragged and covered in dust. The boy's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. He ran toward Cole's porch, his breath coming in shallow gasps. "Mister, if they come, please hide my mom," the boy pleaded as he collapsed onto the wooden steps of the cabin. Cole lowered his rifle slightly, staring at the child. His voice was shaky, but his eyes were full of fear. "Who's after you?" Cole asked gruffly, taking a cautious step forward. The boy's hands were trembling as he clutched his chest. "The Black Marauders, they're coming for her," he gasped. "Please, mister, you have to help us." Cole's brow furrowed. The Black Marauders. Everyone knew about them, even out here in the distant corners of the galaxy. They were a ruthless gang of raiders who terrorized the colonies, pillaging and taking what they wanted. They didn't care who they hurt, and now it seemed they were after a woman and her child. Cole took a deep breath, considering the situation. He wasn't one to get involved in other people's problems. The last time he did, it had cost him everything: his family, his farm, and his peace. But this was different. The boy's eyes were filled with desperation, and the fear in his voice was enough to make Cole hesitate. "Where is your mother?" Cole asked. "In a hiding place close by. She's scared too. She told me to come for help. We're both in danger." Cole glanced toward the dark horizon. The night was quiet, but something in the boy's voice made him uneasy. He had heard of the marauders raiding nearby colonies. "It wouldn't be long before they came this way." "I'll take you to her," Cole said, though he didn't know why. Maybe it was the boy's fear, maybe it was the knowledge that he couldn't turn a child away, but we need to be careful. If the marauders are near, we can't just walk around like this. "Thank you, mister. Thank you so much." Cole motioned for the boy to follow him as he grabbed his jacket and holstered his rifle. The boy hurried to keep up as Cole led him down the narrow trail behind his cabin. The sun was nearly gone now, and the dark sky pressed down, wrapping the world in a heavy, silent blanket. The two walked for what felt like hours, the only sound the crunch of their boots against the dry ground. The boy didn't speak much, and neither did Cole. He had seen too much to be easily moved by the sight of a frightened child. But there was something about this boy that nagged at him. The way he looked, as though his whole world had been shattered and he didn't know where to turn. It made Cole think of his own childhood, the days when his family had been whole, when everything was still simple and good. Eventually, they reached the small cave where the boy's mother had hidden. It was tucked beneath a large rock formation, easily overlooked by anyone passing through. The entrance was narrow, but just wide enough for them to slip inside. The boy pushed aside a few rocks and led the way into the darkness. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of earth. Cole's eyes adjusted quickly, and he saw a woman sitting in the corner. She was thin, her face worn with worry, but her eyes held a fierce determination. She looked up as they entered, her hand instinctively reaching for a small blaster tucked at her side. "Jackson!" she exclaimed as the boy rushed toward her. She pulled him into her arms, holding him tightly. "You're safe. Thank the stars." The boy's face softened in her embrace, but his eyes never left Cole. "This is Mr. Cole. He's going to help us." "Thank you, Mr. Cole. I'm Sarah. I didn't expect anyone to find us out here." Cole nodded stiffly. "I'm not here to make promises, but the boy asked me to help. And I don't leave kids out in the wild." He paused, looking at the woman carefully. What's going on? Why are they after you? I used to work for the Empire. I was a scientist. I was part of a project that got out of hand. They're after me because of what I know, what I can do. The Black Marauders want to use that knowledge for their own gain. Cole's brow furrowed as he listened. He knew well enough that the Empire never let go of its secrets, and that anyone who had knowledge of its inner workings was often considered a liability, an asset to be destroyed or controlled. We need to move quickly, Cole said after a long pause. They're probably already on their way here. Sarah nodded and stood up, taking her son's hand. We'll be ready, but I can't just run forever. They'll come for me again, and next time they'll be ready. Cole looked at her, then back at the boy. He could see the fear in both of their eyes, but also the will to survive. He wasn't sure if they would make it through this, but one thing was certain. Cole wasn't about to let them face the Marauders alone. Then we'll make sure they don't find us, Cole said, his voice steady. We'll keep moving, and we'll stay one step ahead. As the three of them prepared to leave the cave, the sound of engines echoed in the distance, growing louder. The Marauders had arrived. The night had fallen, and the cold winds of Rhaegar howled through the rocks. As Cole, Sarah, and Jackson moved carefully through the narrow canyon, the quiet hum of the wind was broken only by their footsteps. Sarah kept close to Cole, her hand tightly gripping Jackson's. The boy's eyes were wide, scanning the darkness for any sign of danger. Every noise seemed to make his heart race. We need to keep moving, Cole said in a low voice, glancing over his shoulder at the distant hills. The Marauders were out there somewhere, and he knew they didn't give up easily. Jackson nodded, his small hand clutching his mother's. Are they really coming for us, Mr. Cole? His voice was shaky, filled with fear. He had asked the same question many times since they'd left the cave. They'll come. They're not far, Cole answered grimly. His eyes scanned the horizon, but all he saw were the dark outlines of distant rocks and hills. It was hard to tell where the raiders might be, and that made him uneasy. Cole, we need to talk, Sarah said softly, pulling him aside. Jackson stood a few paces away, his eyes still darting nervously at the landscape. Cole stopped and turned to her. There was something in her eyes, something serious. She had been quiet for most of their journey, her mind clearly racing, and now she was ready to share whatever secret she had been hiding. What is it? Cole asked, his voice as steady as he could make it. I haven't told you everything, she said, looking at Jackson for a moment before meeting Cole's eyes again. The Marauders, they're not just after me because of my past. It's not just my research. I've seen what they can do and what they'll do to anyone who gets in their way. Cole's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Sarah swallowed as though the words were hard to say. She glanced at her son again, then lowered her voice. They're hunting me because I know how to create a weapon that could end the war. It's something the Empire's been trying to build for years, but they never succeeded. I managed to finish it. The words hit Cole like a sudden storm. A weapon? The Empire had always been hungry for power, but this was something different. He hadn't expected anything like this. You're telling me that the Empire wants you to build a weapon? Something that could destroy the entire galaxy? Cole asked, his voice rising in disbelief. Sarah nodded, her face pale in the moonlight. It's worse than that. The Marauders are after me because they know about it now. They want the weapon for themselves. If they get their hands on it, they could destroy entire planets, entire colonies, and they won't stop until they have it. Cole looked down at the ground, processing what Sarah had said. He had never been involved in any of the Empire's politics or wars, but he knew enough to understand that this kind of power in the wrong hands was dangerous. And the Marauders, well, they weren't exactly known for their kindness. I don't know what to say, Cole muttered. You should have told me sooner. I didn't want to put you in danger. I didn't want to drag anyone into this. But now they're coming, and I can't hide anymore. The boy, he deserves to be safe. Jackson, Cole said, glancing over at the boy, who was still watching them from a distance. What's going to happen to him? Sarah's face softened, and for a moment she looked more vulnerable than Cole had ever seen her. I'll do whatever it takes to keep him safe. He's all I have left. Cole nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had no children of his own, but he could imagine what it must be like to have someone to protect, someone to love. And the thought of losing that, it made him want to help her, to help them both. We can't just keep running, Cole said, his voice firm now. We need to make a stand. We can't let the Marauders get you, and we can't let them have that weapon. They'll destroy everything. Sarah looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and fear. What do you suggest we do? We'll get to the old Imperial outpost, Cole said, his mind already working through the plan. "I know it's abandoned, but there's a vault there. It's a long shot, but if we can get inside, we might be able to hide the weapon there. It's the only place I know where we'll be safe for a while. The marauders would likely follow them, but if they could make it to the outpost, they might have a chance to slow them down." The outpost had old defense systems, enough to make it harder for the marauders to just walk in. Sarah nodded, though it was clear she didn't feel completely at ease with the plan. "It's better than nothing, I suppose. I'll get you there," Cole promised, "and we'll keep Jackson safe. But you have to trust me. If anything happens, we keep moving, no matter what." "I trust you," Sarah said quietly, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. As they began walking again, the silence between them was thick with the weight of their conversation. Cole could feel the pressure building with every step. The marauders were close. He could feel it in his gut, a deep instinct that had served him well during his time as a soldier. They weren't far behind, and it was only a matter of time before they caught up. Jackson, still walking ahead of them, stopped suddenly, his body tensing. "Mr. Cole, look!" Cole turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. In the distance, a dust cloud rose, visible against the pale moonlight. The sound of engines echoed across the plains, faint at first but growing louder with each passing second. "They're here," Cole said. "Get ready." Sarah and Jackson hurried to catch up as Cole checked the clip in his rifle. They had no choice now. There was no turning back. The marauders had found them, and this time it was too late to run. Cole took a deep breath and led them into the next stretch of rocky hills. The outpost was still a long way off, and the marauders were closing in faster than he would have liked. The next few hours would determine everything. They could make it to the outpost, or they could die trying. And Cole wasn't about to let them down. Not now, not after everything they had been through. "We need to stay ahead of them," Cole said, his voice low but urgent. "Just stay close. We'll make it." But in the back of his mind, Cole couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. The marauders were ruthless, and he knew the fight wasn't over. The wind was biting cold now, and the long shadows of the rocky hills stretched across the plains like dark fingers reaching out to pull them back into the night. The distant roar of engines continued, growing louder with every passing minute. The marauders were closing in. Cole could feel the tension rise as they moved faster, putting as much distance as they could between themselves and the raiders. It was still a long way to the outpost, but Cole's mind was focused on one thing: getting them there alive. He glanced over his shoulder at Sarah and Jackson, who were struggling to keep up. The boy had stopped asking questions, his silence a sign of the fear that had settled deep inside him. Sarah, too, looked strained, her eyes darting nervously as she scanned the horizon. "We can't stop," Cole said, his voice low but firm. "Not yet. Keep moving." The night air was thick with the scent of dust and sweat, and Cole's eyes remained fixed on the trail ahead. His senses were sharp, alert to every movement, every sound. His hand rested lightly on the grip of his rifle, ready to react at a moment's notice. Jackson's voice broke the silence. "Mr. Cole, are we going to make it?" The child's face was pale, and his small hands clutched his mother's tightly. "We'll make it," Cole said, though even he wasn't sure if that was true. The marauders were getting closer, and the outpost seemed farther away with every step. Sarah's face was drawn with worry, her eyes constantly shifting toward the horizon. "I hope you're right," she said quietly, "but I can't help but think we're being led into a trap." "What do you mean?" I know we're running, but it feels like something's off," Sarah admitted. "I'm not sure I trust all of this." "You've been kind, but I don't think the marauders are the only danger we're facing." Cole's brow furrowed. "What are you saying?" She lowered her voice even further, as though the wind itself might carry her words away. "There's someone else looking for us. Someone closer than we think." Cole's heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" "I think there's a traitor in our midst," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone who's been working with the marauders all along. And I think they're here with us now." The words hung in the air like a threat. Cole's eyes darted to the boy, who seemed too frightened to speak. His heart raced as he processed Sarah's words. A traitor? How could that be? They had trusted everyone with their lives. But if what Sarah said was true, then everything had changed. "I don't know how you could know that," Cole said slowly, trying to make sense of the situation. "But I don't see how a traitor could be here." "You've been with us since we left the cave. You're the only ones I've seen." "I didn't say it was you," Sarah replied, her voice trembling with the weight of what she was about to reveal. "But I think someone's been guiding us." They've known exactly where we were every step of the way. Cole's mind raced. Could it be true? Had someone been tracking them? He glanced around, his hand instinctively going to the rifle on his shoulder. The wind howled louder, and the distant sound of engines grew even closer.
They couldn't afford to be caught off guard. I don't know who it is, Sarah continued, her eyes wide with worry.
But I'm scared, Cole. I don't know who to trust anymore. Cole took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. I won't let anyone harm you or Jackson. We're getting to that outpost. We'll figure this out once we're safe. Just as Cole spoke, a rustling sound came from behind them. He spun around, his hand flying to the rifle as he took a defensive stance. Sarah and Jackson froze, their eyes wide with fear. A figure stepped out from the shadows. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, with a rifle slung over his back. His face was shadowed by the low light, but there was no mistaking him. It was one of the few people they had met since they had started their journey, the man who had been part of their group at the settlement just days ago. You! Cole shouted, his voice rising with anger and disbelief. What the hell are you doing here? The man, Caleb, raised his hands in mock surrender. Cole, wait, he said, his voice calm but laced with something colder, something that didn't sit right. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to help. Help? Cole barked. You've been with us this whole time and you didn't say a word about the Marauders? Why are you here now? Caleb stepped forward, his eyes scanning the surroundings nervously. Because I couldn't keep running anymore, he said quietly. I couldn't let them catch up with me. You're one of them, Sarah said, her voice sharp with accusation. You've been helping the Marauders all along. Caleb's face tightened, but his expression softened as he looked at her. No, I haven't. I was just trying to survive. I didn't know what you were running from, Sarah. I didn't know it was this bad. Cole moved forward, his grip tightening on his rifle. You've been leading us straight to the Marauders, haven't you? I swear. I was trying to keep you safe. But I made a mistake. I was trying to protect you, but I didn't know how to stop them.
Cole's eyes narrowed. Stop lying.
You've been with us for days. You've been watching us.
Why didn't you tell us about this weapon, Caleb? You knew what was going on. Caleb looked down, his face grim. I didn't know the full extent of it. I didn't know they were coming for you until it was too late. The tension between them was thick, and for a moment, Cole wasn't sure if he should trust the man in front of him. He'd been loyal, at least outwardly, but now it seemed like every move had been a calculated step toward this very moment. You've been tracking us, Cole said, his voice low and dangerous. You knew where we were the whole time? Caleb finally dropped his gaze, ashamed. I was just trying to survive. I thought I could help, but I made a deal, and now they know where we are. They'll be here any minute. The Marauders were already on their way, and Caleb's betrayal had just sealed their fate. There was no running anymore. They had to face the truth. The outpost was no longer a safe haven. They were too exposed. Stay close, Cole said, his voice tight with anger and frustration. We've got no choice now. We fight. As they prepared to defend themselves, the sound of approaching engines was louder than ever. The Marauders had found them, and this time, Cole couldn't protect them all. They were walking into a storm, and there was no turning back. The wind howled through the jagged cliffs, carrying the smell of dust and sweat. The engines of the Marauders' vehicles roared closer, echoing off the canyon walls like the growl of some ancient beast. Cole's heart raced in his chest, but he didn't have time to think about the fear clawing at his insides. He had no choice now but to act. Caleb stood a few feet away, his expression tense and conflicted. He betrayed them, and now they were all stuck together, trapped in the middle of the barren plains with only a few rocks and a rifle to defend themselves. We're not making it to the outpost, Cole said, his voice low but sharp as he scanned the horizon. The dust cloud kicked up by the Marauders' vehicles was visible now, a sign they were almost upon them. We've got one shot at this. Jackson was pressed close to his mother, his small body trembling with fear. Sarah, though scared, stood tall beside Cole, her jaw set in determination. Despite the knowledge that they might not survive this, she refused to show weakness. Stay close to me, Jackson, she whispered, her hand firmly gripping his. We'll be all right. I won't let them take you. Cole knew Sarah's resolve was unshakable, but there was no illusion of safety anymore. Caleb had given them away, and now the Marauders were just moments from descending on them. All right, here's what we do, Cole said, his voice steady as he quickly laid out the plan. We take cover behind those rocks and we make our stand. I'll keep them busy. You and Jackson need to head for the canyon. It'll take you into the mountains. The marauders won't follow there. Get there, and don't stop." "What about you?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with worry. "What if they come for you?" Cole didn't look at her. He didn't need to. He could see the fear in her eyes, but he had no time for reassurances. He had to protect them, even if it meant sacrificing himself. "I'll hold them off," Cole said. "They'll never make it past me." Sarah wanted to argue, but there was no point. They didn't have the luxury of time or discussion. They needed action. She nodded reluctantly, understanding that there was no other choice. "I'll do it," Caleb said suddenly, stepping forward. "I can help. I know these marauders. I can lead them away from you. I can buy you some time." Cole's eyes narrowed. After everything, he wasn't sure he could trust Caleb, but with the marauders closing in, he didn't have a choice. "Fine," Cole said, his voice tight. "You lead them away. But if you try anything, I'll kill you before you can draw your weapon." Caleb nodded, his expression serious. "I won't let you down." Cole turned to Sarah. "Head for the canyon as soon as we start firing. Don't look back. Be careful, Cole," she whispered. "Please." He didn't respond, but the weight of her words lingered in his mind as he made his way to the edge of the rocks. The engines were close now, so close that he could hear the hiss of exhaust pipes and the grind of metal against the dry ground. The marauders were nearly here. Cole took a deep breath, pulling the rifle from his shoulder and checking the ammunition. His hands were steady, but his mind raced through everything he'd learned in his years of fighting. This wasn't going to be easy, but it was their only chance. He could hear the marauders shouting to one another as their vehicles slowed down, preparing to search the area. The first of them came into view. Tall and muscular men armed with blasters, their eyes scanning the rocks for any sign of movement. They didn't see Cole yet, and that was all he needed. Cole squeezed the trigger. The sharp crack of the rifle broke the silence, and one of the marauders fell, his body crumpling to the ground. The others immediately scattered, diving for cover as the gunfire echoed off the canyon walls. "Go!" Cole shouted over his shoulder. "Now!" Sarah and Jackson sprinted toward the canyon, moving quickly but cautiously. Caleb, who had been standing with them, turned and ran in the opposite direction, heading toward the marauders' vehicles. He fired a few warning shots into the air, causing the marauders to hesitate for just a moment. That was all Cole needed. The marauders were distracted, just long enough for Sarah and Jackson to get away. But Cole's job wasn't done. The marauders were fast, and they were starting to regroup. He had to keep their attention on him, keep them away from the canyon where Sarah and Jackson were heading. He fired again, hitting another marauder square in the chest. The man crumpled to the ground, but Cole knew it wouldn't be long before the rest of them figured out where the shots were coming from. He didn't wait. Cole ducked behind a boulder and moved quickly to another position, hoping the marauders would follow him. His heart was pounding now, not just with fear, but with the knowledge that this was it. This was the moment that would decide everything. He had to buy Sarah and Jackson enough time to escape. The marauders were closing in, their footsteps heavy on the rocky ground. Cole's eyes darted around, looking for anything that could give him an advantage. But the canyon walls were too narrow, the cover too sparse. He had no choice but to make his stand here, alone. Suddenly a shot rang out, and Cole felt a sharp pain in his shoulder. He staggered back, the force of the blow knocking him off balance. He gritted his teeth against the pain, but he didn't stop. He had to keep moving. He fired again, hitting one of the marauders square in the chest, but the others were closing in fast, their guns raised. There was no way he could hold them off for much longer. Then, just as it seemed all was lost, a loud explosion shook the ground. The sound was deafening, and Cole turned just in time to see one of the marauder vehicles erupt in flames. Caleb had done it. He had led the marauders away, and now their vehicles were burning in the distance. The marauders hesitated, confused and disoriented by the explosion. It was all Cole needed. He sprinted toward the canyon, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that Sarah and Jackson were already far enough ahead that they wouldn't be caught. They were safe, for now. He reached the canyon's edge, breathing heavily as he scanned the area for any signs of danger. But there was no one. The marauders were retreating, their attention divided between their burning vehicles and the mystery of what had happened. Cole dropped to his knees, exhaustion washing over him. He had done it. He had protected them. But the battle wasn't over. Not yet. He pulled his rifle tighter. Scanning the horizon one last time, he would follow Sarah and Jackson, make sure they reached the outpost safely, and whatever came next, he would face it head on.